"Mom's so gullible. She believed everything." My daughter laughed on the phone with her friends. I stayed quiet in the next room and kept recording. At dinner, she looked me in the eyes and lied again. I smiled, pulled out my phone, and pressed play. Her face went white when she heard her own voice. "Subscribe to the channel. Leave your like and comment. From which part of the world you are watching. Get comfortable and relax. Let's begin." The wooden spoon was in my hand, stirring the stew when her laughter cut through the kitchen wall. It was a sharp, crystalline sound, meant for an audience. My hand stilled. The rich scent of thyme and simmering beef, usually a comfort, turned cloying. Chloe's voice followed, clear and buoyant, amplified by a speakerphone. "You will not believe what she did today," Chloe said, the smile audible in her tone. A muffled, eager voice chimed in from the other end. I did not move. The spoon handle was warm and smooth in my palm. So I told her I needed $200 for a textbook, a study group textbook, super specific, had to order it online. A pause, no doubt for effect. "Mom's so gullible, she believed everything, didn't even ask for a link. Just opened her wallet and handed over the cash. Like she's so desperate for me to be her friend, it's almost pathetic." The air left my lungs in a silent rush. The tiles beneath my feet felt suddenly cold, gullible, pathetic. The words hung in the steam from the pot. Another voice, a girl's, giggled. "What are you going to spend it on?" "The new Days concert tickets," Chloe said, triumph in her voice. "They go on sale tomorrow. Mom thinks I'm at the library, but I'll be in the online queue. She'll never know." "She never knows anything," the friend agreed. "Right? Last week, I told her I was sleeping over at Becca's to work on a history project. We went to that party at Trevor's lake house. She bought my 'I'm so tired from researching' act completely. And the food? Ugh. She made her famous pot roast again. I told her it was amazing, but seriously, how many times can we eat the same thing? I just DoorDash after she goes to bed." I looked at the pot on the stove. I had picked up the chuck roast yesterday, on my way home from a 12-hour shift. I had seasoned it, seared it, let it braise for hours. I remembered her text from last week. "Thanks for dinner, Mom. You're the best." 3. Scent, I now realized, from a noisy lake house. My fingers uncurled from the spoon. I placed it on the ceramic rest. My movements were slow, deliberate. The initial sting, a white-hot lance through my chest, was already cooling, hardening into something dense and heavy in my stomach. This was not the first whisper of ingratitude, the typical eye roll of a teenager. This was a performance. My kindness, my trust, my food, they were punchlines, material. I walked to the kitchen counter. My phone was there next to a bowl of fruit. I picked it up. The screen was dark. I pressed the button and it lit up. My face, reflected dimly in the black glass, looked composed, older. The gray in my twists was prominent under the kitchen lights. From the living room, Chloe's monologue continued. "The best part is, she always falls for the 'I love you, Mom' stuff. Just lays it on thick when I need something. Works every time." I opened the voice memo application. I had never used it before. A red circle button sat in the center of the screen. I tapped it. A timer began to count. 0, 1, 2. I set the phone down, screen up on the granite countertop. The red light was a tiny, steady eye. I stood there and listened. I listened as she detailed how she had lied about her curfew, claiming a study session ran late when she was actually in a crowded diner with friends. I listened as she mocked the way I asked about her classes, calling it an interrogation. I listened to the easy conspiratorial laughter that followed each confession. The physical details of my kitchen came into a hyper-clear focus. The photograph on the fridge of Chloe at 14, grinning with braces, arms around my waist at her middle school graduation. The slight chip in the edge of the counter from when I dropped a heavy pot years ago. The steady bubble of the stew. These were the evidences of my life, the backdrop to this private comedy. I thought of the $200. I had given it to her this morning in the hallway. She had been rushing, her backpack slung over one shoulder. "Thanks, Mom, you're a lifesaver," she had said, pecking my cheek. I had felt a familiar swell of pride, funding her academic diligence. I remembered the extra night shifts I had picked up last month to pad the just-in-case fund I kept for her. One of those shifts had meant missing my own book club, something I had looked forward to. The recording timer passed 3 minutes. The conversation on the phone was winding down. "Okay, I gotta go before she calls me for dinner," Chloe said, her voice still bright with the residual thrill of her storytelling. "Talk later. Yeah, concert tickets for sure." There was a final burst of laughter, and then the call ended. Silence rushed back into the house, louder than her voice had been. I walked to the phone on the counter. My thumb hovered over the red button, now a square. I pressed it. The timer stopped. A file was saved, labeled with the date and time. I picked up the phone. I played back the last 10 seconds. Her voice, tinny through the small speaker, filled the kitchen again. "Mom's so gullible. She believed everything." I stopped it. I did not feel a new wave of pain. The feeling was different now. It was a clear, cold calibration. I had a record. It was a factual document. It contained no interpretation, no emotional exaggeration. It contained her words, in her voice with her laughter. I put the phone in the pocket of my apron. I returned to the stove. I picked up the wooden spoon and resumed stirring. The stew was thick and rich. It needed to cook a while longer. I turned the heat down to a gentle simmer. The plan did not form in a flash of inspiration. It assembled itself piece by logical piece as I moved through the familiar motions of finishing dinner. I would not confront her now. An emotional reaction would only feed her narrative, the overly sensitive mother who couldn't take a joke. She would explain it away, minimize it, and I would be left doubting my own hurt. No, she had spoken her truth to an audience. I would present it back to her. She would hear it in my presence, where there was no audience to perform for, no friends to laugh along. She would sit with the unadorned sound of her own contempt. I set the table. 2 placemats, 2 napkins, 2 forks, and knives. I took out the good glasses. The ordinary routine of it was a kind of armor. When she came to the table, she would see the same mother, the same kitchen, the same meal. She would have no warning. The back door opened. "Mom, I'm home!" Her voice was sing-song, bright and false, the sound of her backpack hitting the floor in the mudroom. Footsteps approached the kitchen. I turned from the sink, a dishcloth in my hand. I made my face soft. I summoned a smile. It felt like placing a mask over stone. "In here, baby. How was your day?" She appeared in the doorway, cheeks flushed, her hair windswept. She looked young and vibrant and utterly sure of her world. She smiled back, wide and effortless. "It was so long. We had a brutal chem lab. I'm starving. Something smells good." "It's just the pot roast," I said, watching her face. "My favorite," she replied without a flicker. She came over and peered into the pot. "Yum. Can I help with anything?" "You can get the salad from the fridge," I said. My voice was even, pleasant. The phone was a weight in my apron pocket, a quiet, solid truth against my hip. I knew what I had to do. The evening would proceed normally, step by step until it didn't. The reckoning would come at the time and place of my choosing. I had all the evidence I needed. Now I just had to wait for the right moment to present it. She brought the salad bowl to the table, the crisp greens a bright contrast to the dark wood. "So," I said, ladling the rich stew over the mashed potatoes on her plate, "tell me about this chemistry lab. What was so brutal?" Chloe slid into her chair, unfolding her napkin with a practiced flip. "Oh, just this titration experiment. It took forever to get the end point right. My partner was useless." She took a bite of the pot roast, chewing quickly. This is really good, Mom." "Thank you," I said, sitting down across from her. I watched her. I saw the ease in her shoulders, the casual way she reached for her water glass. There was no trace of the girl from the phone call, the one who had mocked this same food. This was her performance for a different audience, an audience of one, who was supposed to be blind. And your study group for history, is that meeting again this week? She nodded, not meeting my eyes as she chased a piece of carrot with her fork. Yeah, probably Thursday. We're tackling the Cold War. It's a lot. She took another bite. How was work? Anything interesting? The shift was smooth. Deflect, engage, appear interested. I had taught her that politeness myself. The usual, I said. Mrs. Henderson's son visited. That was nice for her. I paused, cutting a piece of meat. I was thinking, since you have that study group, maybe I could see your notes sometime. I never learned much about that era. I'd be interested. A flicker, almost imperceptible in her eyes, a slight tightening of her fingers on the fork. Then it was gone. Oh, my notes are a mess. You wouldn't be able to read my handwriting. It's all just dates and names anyway. Super boring. I doubt that, I said, my voice mild. You used to tell me all about your school projects. Remember your model of the solar system? You explained every planet. That was years ago. She had been 10, her hands covered in glue and glitter, explaining the rings of Saturn with serious intensity. She gave a small, dismissive laugh. That was kid stuff, Mom. It was, I agreed. Now it's serious. $200 textbooks, intensive study groups. I let the words hang. I took a sip of water. The investment is important. I'm glad you're taking it seriously. I am, she said, her voice gaining a faint edge of defensiveness. That's why I need the right materials. Of course. I ate a forkful of the stew. It was perfectly seasoned, tender, the result of time and attention. Did you order the book online already? I could help you if you need it. No, she said quickly. Too quickly. I mean, not yet. I'm going to do it tomorrow with the study group. We're all ordering together. I see. I nodded slowly, as if considering this. That's practical. And the concert you mentioned wanting to go to, the Days one? Is that still coming up? Her head jerked up. For a second, pure panic flashed across her face. It was there, and then buried under a confused frown. Concert? Oh, that. No, I don't think I'm going. Tickets are way too expensive, like $200 or something crazy. She laughed, a dry sound. Who has that kind of money? I looked at her. I held her gaze. Indeed, I said, my tone flat. Who does? She looked down at her plate, her appetite seeming to wane. She pushed the food around. The silence stretched, filled only by the hum of the refrigerator. I continued eating. Each bite was deliberate. I was collecting data, her tells, the avoidance of eye contact, the rushed explanations, the quick subject changes. Each one was a confirmation. You're quiet, I observed. Just tired from the lab, she mumbled. You should rest after dinner. No need to go out. It was a statement, not a question. Her gaze shot up, wary now. I wasn't planning to. Good. I gave her a small, closed-lipped smile. It's better to be well-rested, especially if you have a big online queue to join tomorrow for those tickets. I kept my eyes on hers as I said it, watching the words land. She froze. Her fork clinked against the plate. What? I told you I'm not going. You did, I nodded. I must have misheard you earlier. My mistake. I let the lie sit between us. I had not misheard. She knew I had not misheard. The unspoken truth vibrated in the air. She was trying to parse my expression, to see if I was suspicious or just making conversation. I made sure my face showed nothing but mild maternal concern. She recovered, forcing a shrug. Yeah, no problem, it's whatever. The meal continued in a strained quiet. The weight of my phone in my pocket was a constant grounding presence. I had given her opportunities. I had asked about the lab, the study group, the book, the concert. At every point, she had chosen the lie. She had woven her web of stories right here at this table, looking into the face of the person she was deceiving. The casual cruelty of the phone call was one thing. This, the sustained, calm dishonesty directed at me, was another. It was a deliberate act. I thought of the recording. It was not just evidence of mockery. It was a key to this moment. It explained the ease of the lies, the lack of guilt. In her mind, I was a gullible prop in her life's narrative. Why would she feel guilt about fooling a prop? "You know," I said, breaking the silence, my voice softer, "my mother used to say that honesty is the cornerstone of respect, that without it you're building a house on sand. I didn't fully understand that until I was much older." Chloe rolled her eyes, a quick, involuntary motion she tried to disguise by reaching for her glass. "Old people's sayings," she muttered. "Perhaps," I said, "but she worked 2 jobs her whole life to keep a roof over our heads. She missed school plays and parent-teacher conferences. I resented it then. I thought she didn't care." I put my fork down. It took me having my own child, working my own double shifts, to understand that every missed moment was a brick in that roof. It was her honesty of action. She never pretended it was easy. She never lied and said she would be there when she knew she couldn't. That was her respect for me, the respect of truth, even when it was hard. Chloe stared at her plate, her jaw tight. She said nothing. The lesson, if she heard it at all, was an irritant, a preachy digression from a mother who didn't get it. "I'm going to get more water," I said, standing up. I took my glass and walked to the sink. My back was to her. This was the moment I had planned during the first chapter. I took my phone from my apron pocket. I opened the voice memo app. I found the recording. I made sure the volume was set to high. I placed the phone face down on the counter, next to the fruit bowl. My hand did not shake. I filled my glass with water. I turned around and leaned against the counter, looking at her. She was picking at her food, lost in thought, probably already crafting the text she would send her friends about her mother's boring dinner speech. The stage was set. The evidence was ready. The calm before the storm was over. I had gathered all I needed. Now it was time to change the course of the evening. I took a slow drink of water, watching my daughter. The cold resolve in my stomach was solid, immovable. Every word she had spoken, at this table and on that phone, had led us here. She just didn't know it yet. "Chloe," I said, my voice calm and clear in the quiet kitchen, "there's something I need you to hear." Chloe looked up from her plate, her expression a mixture of annoyance and mild curiosity. "Hear what? Is it about the car insurance again? Because I told you I can pay my part when I get my next check from the cafe." "It's not about money," I said. I pushed myself away from the counter. I walked to the table, but I did not sit down. I remained standing, looking down at her. I reached into my apron pocket and took out my phone. I placed it on the table between our plates, next to the salad bowl. The screen was dark. She glanced at the phone, then back at my face. Her brows drew together. "What's that for?" "I told you, there's something I need you to hear." My voice was calm, devoid of the anger she might have expected, devoid of the hurt she had dismissed. It was a flat, factual tone. I tapped the screen. It lit up, showing the list of voice memos. The most recent one was at the top, labeled with today's date and a timestamp from this afternoon. Her eyes darted to the screen. She saw the label. I watched her brain make the connection. Her afternoon, her phone call. The color began to drain from her face, starting at her temples, leaving a pale, waxy sheen. "Mom!" she started, her voice thin. I did not let her finish. I tapped the file. A playback interface opened. A large, triangular play button sat in the center. I looked at her for one more second, ensuring I had her full, horrified attention. Then I pressed it. The sound quality was clear. First, there was the faint hum of the house, the distant bubble of the stew. Then, her laughter. Her bright, conversational tone filled the dining room. "You will not believe what she did today." Chloe's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, were fixed on the phone as if it were a venomous snake. The recording played on. Her voice detailed the $200 lie, the laughter of her friend. My own breathing was silent and even. I watched her. I observed the precise moment her own words, "Mom's so gullible, she believed everything," hit her. She flinched as if struck. A small, choked sound escaped her throat. The performance continued from the speaker. The lie about the lake house party, the mockery of the pot roast, the plan to buy concert tickets, the casual cruelty of, "She's so desperate for me to be her friend, it's almost pathetic." Each sentence was a hammer blow. Her posture collapsed inward. She sank lower in her chair, her shoulders hunching. She was no longer looking at the phone. She was staring at the tablecloth, her face a mask of dawning, absolute horror. The confidence she had displayed minutes ago was gone, eroded by the relentless stream of her own voice. I saw her mind racing, scrambling for a defense, an explanation, but there was none. The evidence was irrefutable. It was her. It was all her. The recording reached its end. The final giggling goodbye from her friend, and then the click of the call disconnecting. Silence rushed back into the room, but it was a different silence now. It was thick, charged, and heavy with shame. The playback interface showed a length of 4 minutes and 17 seconds. I reached out and stopped it. The action was deliberate, final. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The only sound was the ragged, shaky intake of her breath. She was trying not to cry, but her chest was heaving. Her eyes were glassy, fixed on a point somewhere near my elbow. She could not look at me. I let the silence do its work. I let the words echo in the space between us. I let her sit in the wreckage of her own narrative. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was a broken whisper, barely audible. You recorded me." "I did," I confirmed. There was no apology in my tone. That's a violation of my privacy." The words burst out of her, a weak, reflexive attack. It was the only defense she had left. "You were on a speakerphone call in a common area of our home," I stated, my voice still level. "You chose to have that conversation where you could be heard. Privacy implies an expectation of secrecy. You displayed no such expectation. You projected your voice." I paused. "You wanted to be heard. So I listened, and then I preserved it. So you could hear it too." Her mouth opened and closed. The argument died before it could form. She looked down at her hands, which were trembling in her lap. A tear broke free and traced a path down her cheek. She wiped it away violently, as if angry at it. I did not move to comfort her. The time for that was not now. Now was the time for truth, in its raw, uncomfortable entirety. "Look at me, Chloe," I said. It took a few seconds, but she dragged her gaze up to meet mine. What I saw there was not just embarrassment, but a deep, shocking shame. She was truly seeing me, perhaps for the first time in years. Not as a prop, not as a source of funds or a gullible audience, but as a person she had wounded. "That," I said, nodding toward the phone, "is what I heard today. Those are the words you used to describe me to your friends. That is the value you placed on my trust, my work, and my love." I let that sink in. "Now I want you to explain it, not to them, to me." She stared at me, her mouth working silently. The demand for an explanation hung in the air, a barrier she could not cross with another lie. The recording had destroyed all her exits. Her face crumpled, and the tears she had been fighting broke loose in a torrent. They were not delicate tears. They were heaving, ugly sobs that shook her shoulders and made her gasp for air. She covered her face with both hands, her elbows knocking against the table. "I'm sorry," she choked out, the words mangled and wet. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I didn't mean it." I remained standing. I did not reach for her. "You said it," I stated. "You meant to say it. You chose each of those words. You laughed. Explain that." She dropped her hands, her face blotchy and distorted with grief. "I don't know. It was stupid. It was just talking. They were all doing it, talking about their parents, and it just came out. I wanted to sound cool. I wanted them to think I wasn't some mama's girl. Her voice rose to a wail. It didn't mean anything. It meant something to me, I said, my voice cutting through her sobs. It meant $200 I worked for was a joke. It meant my concern for your safety was a joke. It meant the food I make to nourish you is a joke. You made my love and my labor into a comedy routine for your friends. That nothing has a very specific meaning to me. She shook her head back and forth as if she could shake off the truth. I love your cooking. I do. I was just showing off. It was terrible. I'm a terrible person. She dissolved into sobs again, repeating, I'm sorry, between gasps. I finally pulled out my chair and sat down. I did this slowly, maintaining my posture. The distance across the table felt vast. Stop telling me what you think I want to hear, I said, my tone firm but lower. The performative apologies are over, Chloe. The performance is over. I want you to think, and then I want you to answer me with truth. Why did you feel it was acceptable to treat me that way? The question silenced her crying into hitched breaths. She wiped her nose with her napkin, avoiding my eyes. The room was quiet except for her ragged breathing. I waited. I had waited through double shifts. I could wait for this. Because, she started, then stopped. She took a shuddering breath. Because I knew you'd forgive me. The admission was whispered, stark. Even if you found out, you'd get mad, and then you'd get over it. You always do. You're my mom. You have to love me. She risked a glance at me. Her eyes filled with a new kind of fear, the fear of having said something true that could not be taken back. I nodded slowly. Yes, I am your mother. I will always love you. But love is not the same as being a doormat. Love is not the same as funding your disrespect. You confuse the two. I leaned forward slightly. You took the certainty of my love and used it as a license to be cruel. That ends tonight. She blinked, fresh tears welling. What does that mean? It means there are consequences, I said. My voice was clear, devoid of malice, but absolute. The $200 will be repaid. You will not be buying concert tickets. You will work it off. There is a list of deep cleaning tasks in this house that I have put off for months. You will do them all. You will scrub the grout in the bathrooms. You will wash the inside of the kitchen cabinets. You will detail my car. You will do this on your weekends until the labor equals the amount you stole. Stole? She whispered, horrified by the word. You obtained money under false pretenses. That is a form of theft. You can call it something softer if it makes you feel better. I will call it what it is. I held her gaze. Furthermore, your social privileges are suspended. There will be no parties, no lake houses, no sleepovers that are not explicitly pre-approved by me with verification. Your phone will be on the kitchen counter by 10 every night. This is not a punishment born of anger. It is a correction. You have demonstrated a lack of judgment and a profound lack of respect. Until you rebuild that, your freedom will be limited. She listened, her eyes growing wider with each condition. This was not the explosive fight she might have expected, the one she could weather and then forget. This was a calm, judicial sentencing. It was worse. For how long? She asked, her voice small. For as long as it takes, I said. The chores have a definite endpoint, $200 worth. The trust does not. You will earn that back day by day, through honest words and respectful actions. You will look me in the eye and tell me the truth, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's embarrassing. You will come to me and say, Mom, I want to go to a concert with my friends. It costs this much. And we will have a discussion about it, like adults, not like a con artist and her mark. She flinched at con artist, but she did not protest. The fight had left her. She was faced with the tangible reality of her actions. And the recording? She asked, looking at the phone. I will keep it, I said. I may delete it one day when I am sure the lesson is not needed. For now, it is a reminder for both of us. For you, of what you are capable of when you forget my humanity. For me, of why these boundaries are necessary. I picked up the phone and placed it back in my pocket. The action felt symbolic. I was putting the evidence away, but the fact of it remained. She nodded slowly, a mechanical movement. The full weight of the situation was settling on her. This was not a storm that would blow over by morning. This was a change in the climate of our home. "Do you understand?" I asked. "Yes," she whispered. "Do you accept these terms?" She hesitated. I saw a flicker of the old defiance, the desire to argue, to negotiate. It died under the weight of the memory of her own voice. She had no ground to stand on. "Yes," she said more clearly this time. "Good." I looked at our plates. The food was cold, congealed. The dinner was ruined. "Clear the table," I said. "Then you can start by washing these dishes, properly. Not just a rinse. I will inspect them." It was a simple, mundane order. A task she had done 1,000 times, but in this new context, it was the first step of her repayment. It was real. It was now. She stood up, her movement slow and heavy. She picked up her plate and mine. She did not look at me as she carried them to the sink. I heard the water turn on. I sat at the table listening to the clatter of plates and the rush of water. I felt no triumph. I felt a deep, weary sadness, but beneath it, a firm layer of resolve. The line had been drawn. The varnish of false harmony had been stripped away, revealing the rough, honest grain of what was real. It was not pretty, but it was solid. And for the first time in a long time, I knew exactly where I stood. The sound of water and the clink of dishes filled the silence. I remained at the table, my hands resting flat on the wood. I listened to her movements. They were slow, deliberate. There was no slamming, no careless banging of pots. She was being careful. It was a small thing, but it was a data point. After some time, the water shut off. I heard the clean dishes being placed in the drying rack, the soft shuffle of her feet on the tile as she approached the table again. She stood a few feet away, her hands clasped in front of her, head bowed. She looked like a penitent. It was not a pose. It was the genuine posture of shame. "The dishes are done," she said, her voice hoarse from crying. "Thank you," I replied. I did not get up to inspect them. I would later. The trust that she had done them properly was a choice I had to make, one of many I would need to make moving forward. "Sit down." She pulled out her chair and sat, perching on the edge as if ready to be dismissed. She still could not hold my gaze for more than a second. "We need to establish the list of tasks," I said, my tone shifting into the practical. This I could do. This was management. "I will write them down with an estimated time for each. We will agree on a fair hourly rate for the labor. The total must equal $200. Any objections to this method?" She shook her head. "No." "Good." I stood and went to a drawer where I kept notepads and pens. I brought them back to the table. I began to write. Scrub bathroom tile grout, main bath. I estimated 3 hours. Deep clean kitchen cabinet interiors, 2 hours. Detail car interior and exterior, 4 hours. The list grew. I included tasks I had long ignored: organizing the garage storage, washing the windows, cleaning the oven. I assigned fair times. I settled on $15 an hour, a rate above minimum wage, but below what a professional would charge. It felt both just and instructive. I slid the pad across the table to her. "Review it. If you think a time estimate is unfair, say so now." She read the list, her eyes moving down the page. She swallowed. "It's a lot." "It is," I agreed. "Money represents time and energy. You took $200 worth of my time and energy under false pretenses. You will return it in kind. It is a direct equation." She nodded, a slow, accepting movement. Okay, it's fair. Initial here, I said, pointing to the bottom of the page. This is our contract. She took the pen. Her hand shook slightly as she wrote her initials. CD asterisk next to mine. Asterisk A. D. Asterisk. It was a solemn, silly formality, but it made the agreement concrete. It was no longer just a scolding. It was a binding document between us. You may begin tomorrow, I said. You will provide me with a proposed schedule by this evening. Yes, ma'am, she said softly. The ma'am was not sarcastic. It was an automatic sign of deference, a word she hadn't used with me in years. It signaled the new distance between us, a distance built on formality and respect, not familiarity and contempt. We sat there for another moment in the quiet. The formal business was concluded. The emotional chasm remained. Mom, she began, then stopped. She took a breath, gathering herself. What you said earlier, about Grandma working 2 jobs and you working doubles. I know you do that. I see you leave early and come home tired. I put it out of my mind. It was easier to make it a joke than to think about what it really meant. She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed but clear. I'm sorry I did that. I'm sorry I made your life into a punchline. This was different from the frantic I'm sorry of earlier. This was specific. This acknowledged the injury. It was a start. Thank you for saying that, I said. My voice was not warm, but it was not ice. It acknowledged the effort. It is easier to mock what you don't want to understand. Understanding requires humility and work. I don't know if I know how to do this, she admitted, her voice small. To be different. You will learn, I said. One honest conversation at a time. One kept promise at a time. It will be awkward. It will be hard. But it is the only way forward from here. I stood up and began to clear the rest of the dinner things. The condiments, the glasses. She stood quickly and helped. We worked in silence, side by side at the counter, wrapping leftovers, wiping surfaces. It was our normal end-of-day routine, but every movement was charged with the weight of the new terms. Later that night, a text appeared on my phone. It was from Chloe, from her room. Schedule for tomorrow, 9 a.m. start. Bathroom grout. Estimated completion, 12 p.m. We'll check in at noon. It was formal, like a report. It was exactly what I had asked for. I replied simply, acknowledged. A week passed. The house began to smell faintly of vinegar and baking soda, the scent of her labor. I came home from work to find the kitchen cabinets gleaming inside, all the old pots neatly reorganized. My car, when I went to it, was spotless. The floor mats vacuumed, the dashboard dusted. We did not talk much. Our conversations were practical. The garage is next. I need more trash bags. They're under the sink. Thank you. But one evening, she was in the kitchen, making herself a sandwich after finishing a 3-hour window washing session. I was reading in the living room. Mom, she called. Yes? The concert was last night. A bunch of people posted pictures. It looked loud. I looked up from my book. She was standing in the doorway holding her plate. I'm sure it was, I said. I'm glad I wasn't there, she said. And then, as if realizing how that sounded, she clarified. I mean, I'm glad I'm here, doing this. It feels real. It was a clumsy statement, but it was an attempt at the honesty I had demanded. I'm glad you're here too, I said. And for the first time since the recording, I meant it without a layer of sorrow or anger beneath. The revenge was not in the humiliation of the recording. That was just the catalyst. The revenge was in this, the quiet, grinding work of repentance, the restoration of value, her seeing the grout, the grease, the dust, and understanding that these were the tangible fragments of a life she had taken for granted. My victory was not her tears at the table. My victory was her sore muscles, her chapped hands, and the dawning, uncomfortable understanding that respect is earned through action and love must be honored with truth. The new ground between us was rocky and bare, but it was honest. We would build from there. The final task on the list was the garage. It was a space I used as a storage catch-all, a place where things went to be forgotten. On Saturday morning, Chloe stood in the doorway, looking at the stacked boxes, the old furniture draped in sheets, the garden tools coated in a fine gray dust. She had her hair tied up in a scarf and wore my oldest pair of cleaning gloves. She did not sigh or complain. She simply took a deep breath and walked in. I stayed in the kitchen, preparing a grocery list. I could hear the sounds from the garage, the scrape of a box, the rustle of paper, the occasional thud as something was set aside. Every half hour or so, she would appear at the door, her face smudged. "There's a box labeled Chloe, School. Can I open it?" "Yes," I said. "That's your things." A little while later, "Mom, what do you want me to do with these old National Geographic magazines? There are a lot. Recycling bin is full. Stack them neatly by the back door. I'll take them to the center next week." "Okay." Her questions were practical. Her tone was respectful. It was the dynamic of a subordinate checking in with a supervisor. It was not the relationship I wanted forever, but it was the necessary scaffold for now. Around noon, the sound stopped for a longer period. I finished my list and walked to the garage doorway. She was sitting on the floor, cross-legged, an open box in front of her. She held a small cloth-bound book in her hands. I recognized it immediately. It was my mother's recipe journal, the one she'd handwritten decades ago. I had put it in a box of sentimental items years ago, meaning to transcribe it one day, and had never gotten around to it. Chloe looked up as my shadow fell across the floor. Her expression was not one of guilt for prying, but of quiet discovery. "This was Grandma's?" "Yes," I said, stepping inside. The air was cool and smelled of dust and old paper. She gently turned a page. The writing was a tight, elegant cursive in faded blue ink. "Sweet potato pie. For Angela's 10th birthday. She likes extra cinnamon." Chloe ran her finger over the words. "She wrote notes. About you." "She did," I said, leaning against the workbench. "Cooking was how she showed love. The notes were her way of remembering preferences. She had a lot of people to cook for." Chloe turned more pages. "Collard greens. For church potluck, double batch. Cornbread. Bake at 375, not 400 like the book says." Each page was a small, pragmatic record of care. She closed the book softly and looked at the box. It also contained a few of my old nursing textbooks, a bundle of my degree certificates in a folder, and a small jewelry box holding my mother's simple gold pendant, which I wore on special occasions. "You never talk about how hard it was," she said, her voice quiet in the dusty space. "Grandma working 2 jobs, you going to nursing school. You just did it." "Talking about the struggle doesn't lessen it," I said. "Completing the task does. My mother believed in silent work. So do I." "But then how do people know?" she asked, looking genuinely perplexed. "How do they know what it cost you?" I considered her question. They should know by the results: a stable home, an education, food on the table. The problem is, when you grow up inside those results, they feel like a given. They feel like the natural state of the world. You don't see the silent work that built them. You only see the walls, not the bricks. She looked down at the recipe book in her hands, then at her own dust-coated jeans. "I'm starting to see the bricks," she said. It was perhaps the most insightful thing she had said to me in years. It was not an apology. It was an observation, a recognition. "That's the point of all this," I said, gesturing to the garage. "Not to punish you, to show you the composition of things. The $200 wasn't just money. It was hours on my feet. It was missing a book club. It was a decision to prioritize your need over my want. When you lied to get it, you treated all those component parts as worthless. You treated the bricks as dirt." She nodded slowly, understanding solidifying on her face. "So my work here, these hours—" "Are you repaying the hours?" I finished. "Yes. You are converting your time and energy back into the system you took from. You are learning the exchange rate. She placed the recipe book carefully back in the box. She stood up, brushing off her pants. Can I ask you something? You can always ask. The recording, do you listen to it? The question was direct. It deserved a direct answer. No, I said. I have not played it since that night at the table. I don't need to. I remember what it contains. I keep it as a marker, a before and after. Will you ever delete it? I don't know, I said honestly. That will depend on the after that we build. It may become irrelevant. It may remain a necessary reminder. Time will tell. She absorbed this. Okay. She turned back to the clutter. I think I can finish this by tonight. The stuff for donation is in that pile. The trash is there. The keep stuff is by the wall. Thank you, I said. I started to leave, then paused. Chloe. She turned. For dinner tonight, we could make something from that book, if you'd like. She looked surprised, then a tentative, fragile smile touched her lips. It wasn't the bright, performative smile from before. It was smaller, more real. I'd like that. Maybe the cornbread, the one with the temperature note. 375, I said. Right. I went back into the house. The exchange felt significant. It was not forgiveness. It was collaboration, an invitation to participate in the tradition she had mocked, with a new awareness of its origin. The revenge was evolving. It was no longer about settling a score. It was about reconstructing the foundation, with both of us aware of every brick we laid. The quiet work in the garage, the discovery of the recipe book, the proposed dinner. These were the new, honest terms of our relationship. They were mundane. They were everything. We worked side by side in the kitchen that evening. She brought the recipe book in, handling it with a care I hadn't seen her apply to anything in a long time. We read the instructions together. My mother's note was clear. Bake at 375, not 400 like the book says. Makes it tender all the way through. Why did she change it? Chloe asked, measuring the cornmeal into a bowl. I don't know, I said. Trial and error, probably. She learned through doing. She didn't have the internet to look things up. She had her own experience. Chloe nodded, focusing on leveling the measuring cup. Her movements were careful, deliberate. She was following the recipe as if it were a technical manual, which, in a way, it was. A manual for a specific kind of care. As she mixed the dry ingredients, I melted the butter and warmed the milk. The kitchen was quiet except for the clink of the whisk against the bowl. It was a companionable silence, but it was still fragile. We were both aware of the precipice we had stepped back from. Can I ask you something else? She said, not looking up from her mixing. Yes. When you were my age, did you ever say things about Grandma? To your friends? I stopped stirring the butter. The question was a risk. It was an attempt to find common ground, but also a potential trap. A chance to minimize her actions by saying, see, everyone does it. I decided on absolute honesty. No, I said, I did not. I saw her shoulders tense slightly. I continued, but not because I was a better person, because I was afraid. My mother was not a woman you mocked. Her love was steady, but her disappointment was a concrete thing. It had weight, and I needed her too much, for survival, not just for concert tickets, to risk it. My fear enforced my respect. I poured the wet ingredients into her bowl. You never had that fear. I made sure your survival was a given. I see now I failed to make your respect a necessity. She began to fold the batter, her brow furrowed in thought. So, is that what this is? Making me afraid of you? No, I said, preheating the oven to the specified 375 degrees. It is making you conscious of consequence. Fear is a poor foundation. Awareness is better. You are aware now that my trust is not a toy, that my effort is not a joke, that words have impact. That is not fear. That is reality. She poured the batter into the grease skillet. It feels awful, she admitted quietly. Good, I said. It should. What you did was awful. The feeling is the appropriate response. It's your conscience finally speaking up. Don't try to mute it. Listen to it. She put the skillet in the oven and set the timer. We cleaned the bowls and utensils. The work was methodical. As we wiped down the counters, she spoke again. I told Maya I couldn't hang out tomorrow. She wanted to go to the mall. And what did you say? I asked, rinsing the cloth. I said I had prior obligations at home. She paused. She pushed. Asked what obligations? I said I was helping my mom. She sent back an eye roll emoji. I turned to look at her. And I didn't reply. She met my eyes. I didn't explain or make a joke. I just left it. It felt weird, but also right. That was a significant data point. She had chosen the awkward truth over the easy camaraderie of shared dismissal. She had borne a small social cost, alone. Thank you for telling me, I said. The timer went off. The smell of baking cornbread, earthy and sweet, filled the kitchen. She took the pot holders and pulled the skillet from the oven. The top was a perfect golden brown. She set it on the stovetop to cool. We ate it later with a simple bean soup I had made. She broke off a piece, steam rising from it. She took a bite and chewed slowly. It's good, she said. It's really tender. It is, I agreed. The note was correct. We ate without speaking for a few minutes. Then she put her spoon down. The money from the cafe, my next check. I want you to take the $200 from it, before I even see it. I looked at her. The labor was the repayment. That was our agreement. I know, she said, but the labor was for the time, the money. I want to give the actual money back. It feels like the circle won't be closed if I don't. The chores are one thing, the cash is another. I want both accounted for. I considered this. It was an unnecessary gesture according to our contract, but it was a voluntary act of restitution. It showed an understanding of the violation on multiple levels. All right, I said. When the check comes, we will do that. She nodded, seeming relieved. Okay. After dinner, she brought her phone to the kitchen counter and plugged it in, as per the new rule. She didn't linger or complain. She said, "Good night, Mom," and went upstairs. I sat at the clean table, the last of the cornbread in the center. The revenge had taken a shape I had not fully anticipated. It was no longer a solitary project. She was participating in it. She was actively, voluntarily, making amends beyond the dictated requirements. The recording in my pocket felt less like a weapon and more like a relic. The proof of the crime was becoming less relevant than the evidence of the repair. The quiet in the house was no longer the silence of something broken. It was the quiet of concentration, of work being done, internally and externally. The foundation was being dug out inch by inch and refilled with something more solid. It was exhausting. It was hopeful. It was the hardest piece I had ever known. Her paycheck arrived the following Wednesday. She brought the envelope to me in the kitchen after her shift at the cafe. Her hands were slightly stained with coffee grounds. She placed it on the counter between us. "It's in there," she said. $200 in cash. I went to the bank on my break. I picked up the envelope. It was not sealed. I opened it and saw the bifolded stack of 20s on top of her actual paycheck stub. I did not count it. I set the cash aside and looked at the stub. Her hours were listed, the deductions for taxes. Her net pay was $312. The $200 represented the majority of her earnings. "This is a significant portion of your income," I stated. "I know," she said. "It should be." I took the cash and placed it in the wooden bowl on the counter where I keep grocery money. The action was simple. The transfer was complete. "Thank you," I said. "The financial debt is now settled." She let out a small breath as if she had been holding it. "Okay." She picked up her paycheck stub. "I'll deposit the rest tomorrow." Before you do, I said, reaching for the notepad where our contract was written. I drew a line through the list of tasks. At the bottom, next to our initials, I wrote, "Monetary restitution received in full. 4 out of 10. I slid the pad toward her. Acknowledgement. She read it and nodded. Yes. Then we are done with the formal reparations, I said. The contract is fulfilled. She stood there, holding her pay stub, looking uncertain. The structure of debt and payment had been a clear guide. Now it was gone. So, what happens now? Now we live, I said. The rules regarding your phone and social permissions remain in effect. They are not tied to the debt. They are tied to trust. That will be rebuilt through consistent behavior over time. There is no checklist for that. There is only daily choice. She absorbed this. Can I ask, what would constitute enough? To get my phone back at night or to go out? Transparency, I said. Voluntary information. Following through on small promises. A pattern of behavior where I do not have to wonder if you are lying to me. Where your words match your actions. It is not a single event. It is a trend. That's vague, she said, a hint of her old frustration surfacing. It is, I agreed, because trust is not a math problem. It is a feeling based on evidence. You will provide the evidence, and I will assess the feeling. That is the work. She nodded, accepting the unsatisfying answer. She turned to go upstairs, then stopped. Mom? Yes? Maya is having a birthday party on Friday night at a bowling alley. It's from 7 to 10. I would like to go, if you'll allow it. This was the first direct request she had made since the reckoning. It was specific. Location, time, activity. It was not a vague hanging out. It was an invitation to make a decision based on provided facts. Who will be there? I asked. The girls from our lunch group, maybe 10 people total. Her parents reserved lanes. They'll be there chaperoning. Transportation? I can get a ride with Becca's mom, there and back. What is your plan for checking in? She had clearly thought about this. I can text you when I arrive, and I can call you at 9 just to check in. I'll have my phone on me the whole time. I considered her. Her face was earnest, free of its former mask of casual deceit. She was presenting a case. This was the new behavior. I will think about it, I said. I will give you an answer tomorrow. Okay, she said. She did not push. Thank you for considering it. The next day, after my shift, I called the bowling alley. I asked if they had a reservation for a party under the name Maya's Family. They confirmed it, for 10 lanes from 7 to 10. The information matched. That evening, I told Chloe she could go. You will take your own car, I said. I want you to have independent control over your departure. You will text me when you arrive. You will call me at 9. You will be home by 10:30. These are the conditions. I will, she said, her eyes showing relief and a spark of genuine pleasure. Thank you. Friday night, the texts came as promised. Here, parents are present, lanes 5 and 6. At 9 o'clock, my phone rang. Hi, Mom. How is it? It's fun. I'm actually terrible at bowling. We're eating cake soon. I'll leave at 10. All right, drive safely. I will. She arrived home at 10:28. She came into the living room where I was reading. She smelled of bowling alley shoes and frosting. I'm back. I see. Did you have a good time? I did. It was normal. Nice. She hesitated. Maya asked why I've been so MIA. I told her I've been focused on family stuff. She didn't really get it, but she dropped it. How did that feel? Lonely, she admitted, but also clean. I wasn't pretending. That is the trade-off sometimes, I said. Honesty can be isolating, but it is solid ground. She nodded. Good night. Good night. After she went upstairs, I took my phone from my pocket. I opened the voice memos. I found the recording from that terrible afternoon. I played the first 3 seconds, just enough to hear her laughing voice. Then I stopped it. I pressed the delete button. A confirmation message appeared. Delete this recording? I paused. I thought of the stack of 20s in the bowl, the completed contract, the phone call at 9 o'clock, the smell of cornbread, the word clean. I pressed delete. The file vanished from the list. The evidence was gone. The lesson, however, was printed now not in digital memory, but in the changed patterns of our days. The revenge was complete. It had achieved its purpose, not to cripple, but to correct. The silence in the house now was simply silence. Not the quiet before a storm, or the stillness after an explosion. It was the quiet of a foundation settling, strong enough to build upon. The deletion of the recording created a space, an empty slot where the proof of our rupture had been. The next morning, I felt its absence not as a loss, but as a slight, persistent disorientation. I was so accustomed to its latent presence, the knowledge that I possessed the ultimate evidence. Now, the only evidence was the present moment. It was a more demanding form of verification. Chloe, of course, did not know it was gone. The threat of it had been internalized, which was the point. She came downstairs for breakfast, moving with the careful awareness that had become her new normal. She made toast, washed her plate, and asked, "Is it okay if I go to the library after work today? I have a paper to start. I'll be home by 6. This was the new pattern, a request with details, a time frame, an activity that was verifiable. "Yes," I said, "that's fine." "Thank you," she said, and there was no performative cheer in it, just acknowledgement. I was on a day shift that week. When I returned home at 4, the house was empty. At 5:30, I received a text, "At the library," on my third source. "Home by 6. Attached was a picture of a library computer screen, a JSTOR article open. It was unnecessary proof, but she was providing it anyway. She was overcorrecting, and I allowed it. The excess would fade in time, leaving behind the habit of transparency. She walked in at 5:55, her backpack slung over one shoulder, a library book in her hand. "I'm back," she said, placing the book on the table. "It's on the economic policies of the New Deal for history." "How was it?" I asked, chopping vegetables for a stir-fry. "Productive, quiet." She got a glass of water and leaned against the counter, watching me cook. "My professor said my last essay was well argued. I got an A-. "Congratulations," I said, and I meant it. "That's a good grade." "Thanks. I actually did the work for that one. It felt different." She paused. "I used to just skim and BS my way through. This time I read the material. It took longer, but it felt solid." I nodded, the knife making a steady rhythm on the cutting board. That's the difference between building for appearance and building for structure. She was silent for a moment. "Yeah, I'm starting to get that." A few days later, she approached me after dinner. She had her phone in her hand, but she was not absorbed in it. She held it out to me, the screen facing up. It showed a text message thread with Maya. The most recent messages were visible. "Maya, party at Jake's Saturday. His parents are away. Gonna be huge." Chloe, "Can't have plans." Maya, "What plans? So boring lately." Chloe, "Just family stuff. Not my scene anyway." Maya, "Whatever. Loss." "I wanted you to see that," Chloe said, her voice even, "so you know I'm saying no to things. And why?" I looked at the screen, then at her. She was showing me her private messages. This was a level of voluntary disclosure I had not requested. It was a deposit in the trust account she was trying to rebuild. "Thank you for showing me," I said. "Do you feel it's not your scene, or is that just what you told her?" She considered the question. "A bit of both. The idea of a house party with no adults, it sounds chaotic, and I'd be anxious the whole time about getting caught in a lie. So it genuinely doesn't appeal. But even if it did, I wouldn't go, because I gave you my word about my permissions." "I see," I said. "Your reasoning is sound." She put her phone away. "Also," she said, "I wanted to ask you about something. For real, not as a cover story. Some kids from my poli-sci class are forming a study group that meets Sunday afternoons at the campus coffee shop. It's for the midterm. It would be from 2 to 4. Would that be okay? Yes, I said. That is a reasonable academic activity. You have permission. Okay, good. She seemed relieved. The exchange was transactional, but it was a clean transaction. No hidden fees. The following Sunday, she left for the study group. At 3:45, she sent a text. Wrapping up, home by 4:15. She arrived at 4:10. She came into the living room and gave a brief report without prompting. It was helpful. We divided up the chapters to make review sheets. I'm responsible for the section on the judicial branch. That's a complex section, I noted. I know. That's why I took it. I looked at her. Her face was focused, engaged. She was not the girl laughing on the phone about her pathetic, gullible mother. That girl seemed like a stranger now, a character from a play we had both walked out of. The person in front of me was more serious, more grounded, and occasionally sadder. Growth often carries that weight. One evening, we were in the living room, she with her textbook, me with a novel. The silence was comfortable. She looked up from her reading. Mom? Do you think you'll ever be able to forget what I said? I closed my book, marking my place with a finger. No, I said. I don't think I will forget. Forgetting would be a disservice to both of us. It would mean the lesson wasn't important enough to remember. Her face fell slightly. But, I continued, I am learning to separate the words from the person who said them. I am learning to see the person you are becoming, not just the person you were that afternoon. The words are a part of our history. They are not our entire present. She absorbed this. That's fair, she whispered. It is, I agreed. I reopened my book. The conversation was over. It had been a necessary calibration. Later, as she plugged her phone into the kitchen charger at 10, she said, "The study group wants to meet again next Sunday. Same time." "That's fine," I said. "Okay, I'll put it on the calendar." We had started a shared digital calendar for her commitments. It was another simple system of accountability. I went to bed that night thinking not of the past, but of the mechanics of the present. The systems we had built were holding. The new patterns were becoming routine. The revenge had been a controlled demolition. Now we were in the long, unglamorous work of reconstruction. The silence in the house was no longer charged with impending conflict. It was the silence of two people reading, of a clock ticking, of a foundation settling under a new, carefully designed load. The work was not done, but the crisis had passed. We were in the aftermath, and it was, against all odds, becoming a place we could inhabit. Several weeks passed in this new configuration. The calendar on the refrigerator filled with her legitimate commitments, study groups, work shifts, a dentist appointment. The system of requests and check-ins became routine, losing its early stiffness. One Thursday evening, she came home from work and placed a small white bakery box on the counter. "What's this?" I asked. "A lemon tart. I used my employee discount." She opened the box. The tart was perfect with delicate ridges of meringue. "I remember you saying you liked lemon. I just wanted to get it for you. It was a gift. Not for a holiday or a birthday, not as a prelude to a request. It was a simple, spontaneous offering." I looked at her. Her expression was open, hopeful, but not manipulative. She was testing a new kind of exchange, giving without an agenda. "Thank you," I said, and I took a slice. It was tart and sweet. "It's delicious." She smiled, a genuine, quiet smile, and took a slice for herself. We ate standing at the counter. It was a small moment, but it felt significant. The economy of our relationship was recalibrating. The following weekend, she approached me with a different kind of request. "My poli-sci study group wants to have a dinner meeting next Friday at Maria's house. Her mom is making pizza. It would be from 6 to about 8:30. Then, after, a few of us were thinking of going to see that new documentary at the Arts Cinema. It's about the civil rights movement. It starts at 9. I would be home by 11. This was more complex. It involved multiple locations, a meal at someone else's home, and an additional activity. It was a test of the expanded trust. Tell me about the documentary, I said. She pulled out her phone and showed me the listing. It was indeed a historical documentary, well reviewed. It's not assigned, but our professor mentioned it as a good supplement. I thought it would be interesting. I considered the details. A parent-supervised dinner, an educational film, a clear, reasonable timeline. It was the kind of plan a responsible young adult would make. All right, I said. You have permission. The same rules apply. Check-in texts at transitions, home by 11. I will, thank you. Friday arrived. The text came as promised. At Maria's. Her mom says hi. A photo of a homemade pizza. Leaving for the cinema, 8:40. Movie starting. At 10:50, my phone buzzed. It was a call. Her voice was low. Mom, the movie's over, but I have a situation. My spine straightened. What situation? Becca and Maya showed up here. They weren't in the study group. I guess Maya heard about it from someone. They want me to go with them to a diner. They're being really pushy. I could hear faint, insistent voices in the background. One was clearly saying, "Come on, Chloe, it'll be fun. Your mom will never know." I remained silent, letting her navigate it. I told them I couldn't, she continued, her voice firmer now. I told them I had to be home. They're giving me a hard time, calling me a buzzkill. I'm going to go to my car now. I just wanted you to know what happened. I'll be home by 11. I appreciate you telling me, I said, my voice calm. Drive safely. I will. She arrived home at 10:58. She came into the living room. Her face was flushed, but her eyes were clear. I'm back. I'm glad, I said. That sounded uncomfortable. It was, she admitted, sinking into the armchair. They didn't get it. Maya said, you can just text her and say the movie ran late, like it was the easiest thing in the world. She looked at me. It would have been easy. That's what scared me. How easy it would have been to lie. The old me would have done it without a second thought. But you didn't, I stated. No, I didn't. She let out a long breath. It wasn't even really about the rules. It was, I didn't want to. I didn't want to have to remember a lie. I didn't want to cheapen the night. The movie was really good. I didn't want to end it with that. This was the core of the change. It was no longer just about external compliance. It was about an internal shift. The reward of integrity was beginning to outweigh the social cost of honesty. You made the right choice, I said. It feels lonely, she said again, echoing her earlier sentiment. It can be, I agreed. But you're not alone. You have a mother who knows where you actually were tonight and who believes you. That is a different kind of company. She nodded, a thoughtful look on her face. Yeah, it is. The next morning, I was in the kitchen making coffee. She came down, still in her pajamas. She went to the refrigerator and looked at the calendar. My last study group before the midterm is tomorrow, she said. After that, my schedule opens up a bit. She turned to me. I was thinking, maybe we could go out to dinner, just us, my treat, with my real paycheck money. It was an invitation, not a transaction, a shared meal funded by her legitimate labor, proposed for its own sake. I would like that, I said. We went the following Tuesday to a small Italian place she chose. She paid with her debit card when the check came. The conversation was easy. We talked about her midterms, a funny patient story from my work, the documentary she'd seen. There were no landmines to avoid. The territory was clear. As we drove home, she said, You know, I've been thinking. I want to change my major to social work. I've been reading about it. That's a big shift, I said. What prompted it? I don't know. Maybe all this. Thinking about systems and families and how people heal, it feels like something that matters. It feels like real work. I glanced at her profile in the dim light of the dashboard. She was looking straight ahead, her face serious. She was no longer the girl who wanted concert tickets at any cost. She was becoming someone who considered cost and value in a broader sense. It is real work, I said. It's hard work. I know, she said. I think I'm ready for hard work. We pulled into the driveway. The house was dark except for the porch light. We went inside. She placed her keys in the bowl by the door. "Good night, Mom," she said. "Good night, Chloe." She went upstairs. I stood in the quiet hallway. The revenge was complete, but it was not a destination. It was a process that had transformed into something else, reconciliation. The ledger was balanced. The debt was paid. The lies were fossilized in the past. What remained was this: a woman and her daughter, living in a house where words had weight, where promises were kept, and where the quiet, dignified work of building a truthful life continued, one honest day at a time. The love had been there all along. Now, finally, it was fortified with respect. That was the victory. It was a quiet one. It was enough.